to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room for a somber episode. We are in mourning, folks. That's right. It was a tough episode of Succession. It was a tough episode of Ted Lasso. We've got a fun movie to talk about, though. But Johnny and I are here to break it all down. An emotional roller coaster of a week. Johnny, how are you holding up, my friend?
I'm good. I have mixed emotions, I would say. Still, a lot of it is just shock.
Yeah.
But it's been, just this last week, since we last recorded, it's been a really eventful and fun kind of period of movie news, TV news, trailers. It's movie releases, new shows. Like it's a good time. So lots to dig into. So I will not delay.
Absolutely. We have a ton on the radar today. Like I said, we are talking about on the big screen, looking at Air, the Michael Jordan Nike sneaker deal movie directed by Ben Affleck, starring Affleck, Matt Damon, Viola Davis. Solid movie. We'll talk about it. Then, of course, the epic, groundbreaking episode of Succession that aired last night. Major stuff happening. We'll save it for before we get into the spoilers for anyone who is not up to date. And then we'll talk Ted Lasso season 3, episode 4 as well, as we chug along through this new season. But before all that, make sure you're subscribed to the Rewind newsletter. We've got a whole lot of fun stuff on the horizon. Interviews for Apple TV Plus is shrinking, just wrapped up. We're in the process of getting those ready for you all, and they will be coming out soon, followed by interviews from Schmigadoon, the musical theater comedy series on Apple TV Plus, and then, of course, good old Ted Lasso. The week of Lasso will be back for a third edition and final, perhaps. Who knows? We'll see. But make sure you're signed up to the Rewind. It's on our social pages, on our website. You can find that at Inside Film Room, and everything will come straight to your inbox. So go do that. But before we get into the specifics, Johnny, what have you been watching? What are you catching up with outside of Succession, outside of Ted, outside of Air?
Not very much. That's
okay.
I got my plate pretty full at the moment, but I got to get caught up on the most recent episode of Mandalorian. Reagan was out of town this weekend, so we didn't get a chance to sit down and watch that. But outside of that, nothing too crazy. The one thing I will say that's new, I guess, that I watched is Tetris. The Apple
still
TV
on
Plus,
my list.
Apple TV Plus film starring Taron Egerton. My buddy and I just one night I was like, "Hey, it's a new movie. Should check it out. I guess we can just see how it is." That'd be a fun little watch, and it was pretty good. I wasn't wild about it. I didn't feel very strongly like really one way or another, or like any particular factors about it that I was passionate about. But it's an interesting, mostly true, supposedly true story, and I never would have guessed that the history behind Tetris was so complicated and in dealing with world events, political.
I remember when this was first announced, Tetris, I was like, oh, is this like a spinoff of that Adam Sandler movie Pixels? Like, is that what we're getting at here? But no, this is a very real, based on a true story, political thriller drama almost.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. It's kind of like a fun way to learn some history, if nothing else. And Taron Egerton, he's always good. I haven't seen him in anything in a while, so it's nice to see him in another kind of starring role. He's always good.
Well, it's probably it's hard to compete with Blackbird, which we loved,
Hmm.
but you know, Taron Egerton and Apple, I'll always be down for that. It's on my list. I'll get to it, but have not gotten to it yet. What I have been getting to though is Schmigadoon season 2, aka Schmicago, new era of musicals being tackled. It premiered on Wednesday with 2 episodes, and I've already seen all 6, not to flex, but this show is fantastic. I was like medium warm on the first season. I'm not like a crazy big musical theater person. I grew up around it because my brother did theater, Rebecca did theater in high school and college. So I've seen my fair share of musicals. But the first season was very much it was like not old timey, but like an earlier period of musicals than I was familiar with. And this is now, you know, getting into some of the bigger names like Sweeney Todd or Chicago or Hair, Godspell, like a lot of stuff that I'm much more familiar with. And it is a fantastic like blend of originality and parody. And I'm really, really enjoying it. Or really enjoyed it. And it's made me go back and rewatch the first season, and I'm enjoying that one more now. So I would say if you're a musical theater fan, absolutely check it out. Even if you're not,
Yeah.
I would say it's like, I feel like, I don't know if Reagan has watched it, just knowing her theatrical background, I feel like this would be up her alley, but it's like very much still a comedy, and you don't have to like, there's musical numbers and references and stuff, but you don't have to know everything about the history of theater and all these shows and stuff to be able to enjoy it. It's still a good time. And you've got like Keegan Michael Key and Cecily Strong are the 2 leads, which are obviously more, you know, TV comedy stars, and then they're surrounded by a bunch of TV stars who are also Broadway legends and whatnot. So it's a really solid cast, and a whole lot of fun. And like I said, we'll have some interviews from that coming up soon. So that's going to be a blast. And outside of that, Ted, Succession, Mando. I did watch Mando. I know you said you have to catch up still.
Mm-hmm.
Lizzo, Jack Black. I saw a photo of that and I was like, this is not real. This has to be a parody. Like, this is Photoshop. And then it was in fact real. And I was very turned off by the photo because it just looked absurd. But the episode, don't fret. The episode was still pretty solid. They were in it for maybe like 5 minutes. So nothing to be too concerned about. And honestly, the only thing that was like threw me off is that I was literally like, that's Lizzo, that's Jack. Like there was no immersion in this world because it was just Lizzo in Star Wars. So outside of that, it was still okay. And then also started a new show on Hulu. Kathryn Hahn is starring in a show called Tiny Beautiful Things. And I've watched 2 episodes of that so far, and it's a pretty solid dramedy. Mainly drama, little comedy, but I'm always down for some Kathryn Hahn. So we'll see how that goes. It's 8 episodes. It all dropped last Friday. So I'll report back. But other than that, only saw Air on the big screen, and we are talking about that in a few. So we'll save that. But before we get into Ted, Succession, all that, some big news, Johnny. I know you alluded to things, specifically a lot of Star Wars news. We had Star Wars Celebration this past week over in London. It was a multi-day event, and a whole lot of news came out of it. Namely, most importantly, I would say, the future of Star Wars on the big screen. We were just talking about Mandalorian. Star Wars on the big screen has been in shambles since 2019, prior to 2019, because The Rise of Skywalker was a hot mess. They don't know what they're doing on TV. They've had, or on film, I guess, they've had projects come and go. Everything that was announced has been canceled, but it seems like they took a step back, went back to the drawing board, really sorted this stuff out, and have now come forward with 3 new movies. They are not creating I don't know if this would be considered a trilogy. They're kind of referencing it as a trilogy, but it is not a trilogy of like 3 connected movies within this, like episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. 3 movies set at 3 different time periods, and they're sticking to what they know, it seems, because they've got James Mangold directing one, who is within the Lucasfilm family already, having directed the upcoming Indiana Jones movie. His movie will be set 25,000 years prior to the original trilogy. It'll be like the dawn of the Jedi, taking us all the way back to the first Jedi. Very intriguing to me. I'll give them all and then turn it over to you, Johnny, to see if anything here strikes your fancy. Any thoughts that you may or may not have about these movies. But 25,000 years prior, a completely new time period before the High Republic. So that'll be, as far as I know, the earliest Star Wars we've ever seen. Then in the middle, we've got Dave Filoni's series movie. He's the one who's kind of, with Jon Favreau, revamped Star Wars with all of the TV series, all of the animated series. His will be a New Republic film set in this era of Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Boba Fett, some of his animated shows like Rebels, Clone Wars. So that one is going to be supposedly a culmination of the storylines that we have seen through these shows. So I am not, again, I'll get your thoughts in a second. This is the one I'm most worried about because it seems very much the Marvelization of Star Wars, in that, hey, we're having this big crossover event. This is going to be Endgame. It's going to be, oh my God, there's Mando. Oh my God, there's Ahsoka. Like, I'm worried. This doesn't seem like a movie, because a movie has to have a beginning, middle, and end. You know, it has to be this story, and instead it's going to be all of these stories that are set up elsewhere, and then this is just coming together for the climax. That's my initial reading of this. However, Dave Filoni has proven himself to be like a very solid, capable leader within Star Wars, as this second coming of George Lucas, it seems. So I'm willing to let it ride, give it a chance. But of the three, this is the one I'm least excited about, despite being a big fan of a lot of these shows. And then the third one, which again, I'm just reading these in 1, 2, 3 order, but we don't have any dates, no timelines, nothing like that. So who knows what order they'll come out in. But Sharmeen Obad Chinoy, who did Miss Marvel, she will be directing a movie set 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker. They're bringing back Daisy Ridley as Rey Skywalker as she begins to form a new Jedi Order. Personally, didn't like The Rise of Skywalker, but huge fan of Daisy Ridley, of Rey, this character. So I'm excited to see her pick up the mantle of what Luke attempted to do but could not, rebuilding the Jedi after the events of the sequel trilogy. They've said that some people could come back. We could see other characters, maybe a little more Finn, a little more Poe, something like that. Who knows? But just on Daisy Ridley alone, I'm excited for that one. So I would probably rank my own interest, the Mangold movie, then the Daisy Ridley movie, and then Dave Filoni's. So turning it over to you, I just laid it all out there. What are your thoughts on this? I know you're not a Star Wars nut. You're not as nearly as invested in this franchise, but anything here that strikes your interest, or is this just a complete snooze fest for you?
Nothing that really moved the needle necessarily. I woke up on, I think it was Saturday morning, and or maybe it was even Friday morning, and I just looked at the news
I think
feed.
it was Friday.
Yeah, Friday. I woke up my day off, saw all this, and I was like, huh, okay. Huh. Like, it's just, and some of it was surprising. I didn't expect Daisy Ridley to come back, just a few years.
Especially, I mean, she had said, like, I believe the quote was like, I am perfectly happy with the way that my story ended, that Rey's story ended. So it's like, they must have dangled a fat bag of cash in front of her to get her come back. Or well, it could be, or she's very invested in this story. They've come to her with this map of what this character could be doing, and that's enough to get her back. I'm sure the money was involved as well, but hopefully they also have a fantastic story that she's very invested in.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm keeping an open mind with that. I really didn't ultimately end up feeling very much or caring so much about the sequel trilogy. It was like a roller coaster of emotions, I think, beginning to end. And if we never saw Daisy Ridley in another Star Wars movie, I wouldn't feel anything, and I don't feel really anything her coming back. I think it's cool. I hope it works out for her. I hope it works out for the fans of that character. But like, it's not something I'm really just like amped about. Similarly with the Dave Filoni movie, not really sure, to your point about the structure, the story all tying together. I'm really nervous about how that could look and feel. You know, he's never worked with a budget or any sort of production of this scale. I mean, yes, you can say The Mandalorian, some of these other shows are on the scale of a movie, of course, but there is something different about filming a movie that is supposed to be an hour and a half to 2.5 hours that's going to be going to theaters worldwide versus a series that plays out over 7, 8, 9 hours
Knowing
and
you have a season
Disney
2
Plus.
and
Yeah. So, and this is a culmination. It's not even something that's building to something else. So it's very speculative and almost like an experiment for them to give him that project. I'm curious to see how it goes. My feelings and passion behind The Mandalorian is waning, and I don't even care about these other things. Like, I don't know how this ties into like that show that they were going to do about like the pilots, and then that was kind of like tied off.
The New Republic show kind of got spun into
Yeah,
just like all
Mandalorian,
of
it seems like.
Mandalorian and
Yeah.
this era.
Ahsoka, she's having her own show, and that's will be tied in, no doubt. I guess we have to wait and see how that is, because if that show comes out and it's mid, why would I have any interest after a season of The Mandalorian that I didn't really care for that much, and then another mid show, and then I guess maybe another season of Mandalorian, and then I guess we're gonna roll into this movie. Like I just there's too many different factors and too many question marks, and not in a good way question marks. So yeah, that's definitely at the bottom of the barrel for me. And then at the top is this Jedi origin movie, which I think there's just so many good question marks here and so many open-ended opportunities that on principle and concept alone is the most interesting. If there was no director or writer attached, I would already be the most interested in this one. But I think that James Mangold being attached, who is a proven, experienced quality filmmaker, Logan as a big budget movie to point to, Ford v Ferrari as a more recent movie of his. He has a plenty, 310 to Yuma, Walk the Line. He's well and proven. Girl Interrupted, across a number of genres, number of budgets.
Doing Swamp Thing as well.
And Swamp. Hey, that was the news that really got my juices going on Friday. But
yeah.
I think this is cool. I mean, who knows when this movie will come out? Who knows if this movie will even come out? I well and truly hope that Swamp Thing really suits his fancy, and like he's really like amped about that and chooses to go with that first. Because that's what I care about is DC and Swamp Thing. Like I'm more interested in that than anything on the Star Wars side of things. So we'll see. But I think the way he described it is like an epic or even a biblical epic in story. There's a lot of really cool visuals and storytelling techniques that he can pull from for that. So I'm keeping an open mind. But yeah, overall these movies, we'll see. We'll see what comes. We'll see what goes. But I'm happy that they seem to be doing something for at least the fans that really are thirsty for more Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, as a big Star Wars fan, and someone who has been, I've been invested in like everything that has come out, but I've never been down on, I guess, like the idea of what's to come. Like they've obviously had a bunch of different projects announced and canceled and whatnot. I think from what I could tell, the reception of all of the stuff that was announced and teased was fairly positive. I feel like it was as far as Star Wars, like Lucasfilm could consider it was a win because everything had, and they needed a win badly because everything had been outside of the TV shows, just like question marks and not really having a stable future. So I'm excited that they have the confidence to put forward a plan for the big screen. And again, plan is the big word because that's what they did not have in the sequel trilogy.
Right.
So I think that having these three as, a cohesive three, but also standalone movies that are not intertwined or setting up, they could probably have, if they're probably gonna make these three, see what sticks, and then spin off that into its own trilogy or something like that, which like, sure, okay, that's fine. But
right.
I like the idea of like telling three separate stories rather than something that's interconnected. But on the TV side, not the movie side, but more concretely, things that we do know are happening. This, again, who knows if those 3 movies would happen, will happen. We can hope. We got a first teaser trailer for Ahsoka, the show that is coming out in August. So that will spin off of The Mandalorian, off of the Clone Wars, this character that fans came to love via the Clone Wars. I'm excited for it. It looked very good. A lot of cool Jedi action here. We've got a bunch of characters. I feel like at this point, like, I have to do homework. I have to watch Rebels prior to this show because there are 5 or 6 characters from Rebels, the animated series, that were all, I'm sure they'll be explained enough for casual fans to pick up on here. But the Rebels fans seemed very excited about, you know, Ezra Bridgers, Sabine Wren, I don't even know who else, but lots of people from that series are popping up here. And Grand Admiral Thrawn, who was in Rebels, but also originates in the non-canon literature. It seems like they're really incorporating that. One of the books is titled Heir to the Empire, and they mentioned that in the actual trailer. So that's exciting. Right. The Acolyte trailer, that we didn't get anything as fans, but at the event they had the cast there. They teased footage. That's one that I'm very excited for, as it's very much investigating the Sith and the High Republic in an era that we haven't really seen before. So that has the potential to be very cool. They teased Andor season 2, which obviously we love the first season. That's not coming until next year, I don't believe, 2024. And then a couple smaller things. Vision season 2, that's the anime show. Tales of the Jedi, which was the animated shorts that kind of filled in the gaps on some stuff. I really was high on that. So that's going to be getting a season 2, assuming that's going to focus on 2 different Jedi this time around. The last one was Count Dooku, and Ahsoka Bad Batch will get its 3rd and final season. Another sneak peek at Skeleton Crew. That's the live action show with Jude Law. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that are guaranteed to happen, could happen. I think as a Star Wars fan, it seems like a positive time. I all of these have at least my interest and curiosity at this point. So there's nothing that I'm dreading or questioning why they're
do any of them have your attention?
I mean, I definitely say Ahsoka and the Acolyte. I feel like those are my 2 biggest ones. Obviously Andor, but that's a ways away and we know all about it. But I'd say those 2 are the most immediate ones. I know the video games got some updates as well, but I am not invested in those enough. So,
right, yeah, got you. Okay.
I would say it was a successful Star Wars celebration, at least as far as I'm concerned. So,
word.
Shall we move on into the television section here as we talk about Ted Lasso? Man. Big week, episode 4. That's the name of the episode. Everyone's feeling the pressure as Richmond gear up to play West Ham. Ted is reunited with an old friend. The match we've all been waiting for, obviously, Nathan after his departure. It was bound to happen. West Ham versus Richmond. And things don't go so well for the old Greyhounds. Big defeat. No bueno. But what were your thoughts, Johnny? What were your thoughts?
I had mixed feelings about this episode. I mean, mixed positive, definitely, but I think, you know, with all the build up to this particular matchup, I don't know how I feel about the way that they decided to play it out. Particularly, I think the main thing obviously is how it ends, or like what the result is. And that is that they basically like completely lose their minds in the most like cartoonish, like comical way possible. And they just like go out there and they're not even playing soccer. Like they're literally just tackling and like beating up like the other team and West Ham. And it's like, it's so overblown, like the way they go about it. So they have like no opportunity to try even like be close to winning the game. They get blown out. And it's just like there's a lot of division within the team. Like at this point, Zava, has caused some like ripples in a not good way. Ted, the way he's kind of like trying to handle things versus the way that maybe Beard and Roy want to try to manage it.
Mhm.
There's just like some conflicts going on there. So I can see why. I just think my main thing is like it was a little too over the top. Like I get that Ted Lasso is like an absurd show. I like that. Season 2, I think I liked how much they dove into that. But for such
Right.
a big important episode, at least at this point in like the scheme of what I can see so far, I wish they would just done something a little bit more low key and a little bit more, I don't know, like I guess driven in like a way that I could like understand a little bit more. Like I didn't really understand why they would come out and like completely lose their minds like that. Like I get what the point was because they had Nate tear up the sign and they found that out, and Beard and Roy
Mhm.
thought they could just show them the footage and not include Ted. Um, and so I guess I have to see where that's going to go in the next episode, next couple episodes, and ultimately like at the end of the show. But yeah, I don't know. I will say I thought they stuck the landing pretty well with the final scene with Ted talking to his
Michelle.
ex-wife. I thought that was done well, or at least his estranged wife.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really well done. Like I think that was a great kind of like landing for Ted through the arc of the episode, but also where that whole relationship has gone to this point. So that left me with a good taste in my mouth. But for me, it was just a little too wild and like nonsensical, just the way that the actual showdown, the matchup ended up playing out, which I was excited for. But I guess they were subverting my expectations a little bit there.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, obviously, like, well, I was gonna say, this early in the season they're not gonna have the climax, but some shows don't follow that rule, um, which we'll get to. But
right.
I I I would say like I was very, when I knew that this match was coming, like obviously they're gonna play again at some point in the season, like it's gonna build up to it. Um, Kind of like talking about like the Creed movies or something of like he loses the match early in it and then wins a match
Right.
at the end or some sort of like formula like that. Um so I wasn't too surprised that they lost. I do agree on the manner of the loss. I think it shows the
Right.
big difference in Ted and his character obviously being despite everything Nate has done, wanting to be the protector of him and,
Yeah.
not have the like scorched earth relationship where he rats him out to the players and they all hate him. He's trying to cover for him, even though he did all of these horrible things. And obviously Beard and Roy don't feel the same way.
Yeah.
But and we even see that as Ted and Nathan are in the elevator together. Ted's trying to interact with them, whether that's genuine or Ted's just toxic positivity. Um,
Yeah.
but there's obviously unfinished business there, and I liked the way that they've hinted so much with Nathan at like he knows that he was wrong and
Yeah.
has regrets, but he's still under the thumb of Rupert. From that very early scene, like 2 minutes in, where
Yeah.
Ted has his Lego set that we've seen of Richmond and a little Nate figurine, and then Nate has his fake soccer pitch where he maps things out and laughs when he knocks Ted off the table, but then picks him up and gives him a little nod. Like, yes, there's still hope there. There's still something. And even
Right.
he almost comes clean in the elevator before Rupert bombards them. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited in what they're showing there and the the chance for redemption. I've said before, and I still believe it. I don't want Nate to get fully redeemed because I want to see Ted grow and know that he can't make everything right,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But I still like seeing that Nathan has this sort of regret.
Right. Yeah.
But
That's a good point. Um, I would say also like I guess one other thing I'm not like sure about, like how I feel about it, that they're putting like more and more attention on, I feel like, is the um Keely's new friend slash business partner. Like
yes,
there's just
I'm absolutely out on Shandy as a character. I
yeah,
I will say we did get the introduction of Jack, played by your girl Jodie Balfour
Jody.
from For All Mankind.
Dude, you should have
But
seen the look on my face when she popped up. I had no idea. I guess
oh
I don't
really? This
I don't know
this
if
was
this
reported.
yeah.
This was reported in the trades like back in last year of probably over
Yeah.
a year
Okay. Now that
ago.
you say that, I actually do remember, and I'm sure I remember being excited about it or being interested, but I just like forgot.
Mhm.
So when she did show up, especially not knowing that it would be this episode, I was like, oh my God, like I love her. Like she's so great. Yeah, everyone go watch For All Mankind. It's one of the best shows on streaming, but Apple specifically. But yeah, I don't know where that whole situation's going, like in general. Like, is Jack gonna be back? Is there gonna be something else going on there? Just this whole thing with Shandy and then like the banter, like drama. I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, what?
Yeah, I
I'm really not wild about that
I
subplot.
like I like the overall Keeley story. Like I'm still feeling it out, but I'm enjoying like
Yeah.
Keeley has been trained up under Rebecca essentially and is now leaving the nest and becoming her own Rebecca. And that's what it seems like that's what she was hoping to do with Shandy of, seeing herself and in her, like she came from the lifestyle that Shandy was still living and has now she's trying to bring her into this business sphere and coach her up the same way that Rebecca did her. Um, but instead it's not quite working out the right way and we get this moment at the end where she has this epic screw up about the show or about the app right in front of
Yeah.
their main investor and Keeley has to discipline her and figure out how to
Mhm.
handle this. And so I'm excited in that regard of like what it's doing for Keeley, but like we're spending far too much. I agree, we're spending too much time with Shandy. I don't think she's intended to be likable, but she's not unlikable in a fun way that you enjoy to like dislike her. Um, so I'm really hoping we get a bit away from her as a character, and I'm fine to see like I was very we didn't get much Jodie Balfour here, but I am excited to see more of her potentially and more of her and Keeley. So we'll see what comes of that storyline. But I want to see more of Rebecca and Keeley together because I know that like I said, they're trying to do this thing with Keeley like being her own Rebecca, but that's the dynamic that was so fantastic in season 1 and 2, seeing them together. So I don't want
Mhm.
to stray too far from that. But there was one other moment in this episode that I wanted to mention. Oh, speaking of Rebecca, the big catch of her finding out that after Rupert two-timed his wife with Rebecca and then two-timed Rebecca with someone else, is now two-timing his new wife, Bex, with his secretary, his assistant.
Yeah.
So
Ugh.
it was nice to see Rebecca call her out or call him out on that. And I'm curious because it seems almost like Bex knows or has some inkling because we
Yeah.
get these moments of her making fun of Rupert or saying things that like Rebecca never would have said during their relationship. So it's almost as if Bex has like this power over him or it is like essentially blackmailing him of like, what are you gonna like? I'm gonna say this, talk shit about you, but you have no power to do anything because I know your secret or something like that.
Right.
Which I liked. It seemed like Bex never really had much of a character outside of just being the arm candy, but we get a little moment between her and Rebecca as they're having this sort of like empathy between each other, understanding what it's like being Rupert's wife, essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
I like
yeah,
that. I agree.
yeah, and
Um,
I'm curious to see where that goes because if we it's like we didn't need anything to make Rupert more despicable, but here we are.
yeah, he's not a good guy by any stretch. But yeah, I think the highlight of this episode, just to kind of put a bow on it for me, was the Ted through line. I think just trying to get a handle and like really like reflect on himself, like you know, coming to grips with where he actually is in his life and not trying to um like kind of BS himself or like BS other people about where he is, which he has been doing, obviously. But he tried to do that with I guess Sassy is her nickname, and then you know,
Mhm.
the other coaches and you know, even his therapist, like to some degree, I think. And so having that kind of through the episode, him having this realization and kind of mulling it over, and that, I guess, being reflected in the big game and kind of how that plays out. And he's just kind of like an onlooker, and it's like everything that's just going on like inside him, like in response to that. I thought was nice. And then of course he has, yeah, that face to face with Nate and Rupert. And, you know, I think that's just a small hint of kind of what the next phase of that rivalry might look like, or the outcome will be. But yeah, I thought that was well done. And like I said, it all culminates with the ending of the episode, which I thought was one of the better endings that I could remember from the show. So
And also with that ending, we get the same way that I said there's still hope with Nathan, and when he knocks Ted off the table, picks him back up, that after that call, there's like a slight smile from Michelle after she hangs up. It cuts to her. And I don't know if that's, you know, just okay, that was a great point from Ted. Like, we're making progress in our
Jason Sudeikis
moving
living out his
forward.
fantasy.
or if it was you know, wow, Ted was very sweet. Like that's the Ted that I love and married, or something like that. So I don't want them to get back together. I want, you know, Ted to
Yeah.
find you know, his priorities with Henry and move back and be happy and whatever. But
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting way to further close it out. And a couple quick hitters before we wrap up. Bookending this episode with Jamie Tart and Roy. I'm loving their bromance as they continue to, you know, we got some moments in season 2, but continuing to, Roy sees the star in Jamie, sees that he's developing as a leader. They've got their private workouts going now. We got Jamie double cheeked up, wearing a top, no bottoms to start the episode, and then a little callback to that when Roy's asking him about it later. And then at the end, when Roy goes for another workout, Jamie's already ready and hits the road for their workout. And 2 other very tiny Easter eggs, but it's one of my favorite things about the show, the way that they set the stage, circle back to it later. I can't remember if it was season 1 or season 2, there's a moment where, I guess probably season 2, Keely and Rebecca are in the office, and Keely's like, oh, I can't ever decide what I'm going to tell, how I tell people when I have to go to take a shit or something like that. And Rebecca's like, I say, I have to go reapply my lip liner. Men don't know what it means, and women know that it takes a long time. And so then when they walk into the office, not in the office, into the stadium, and Keely's nervous, she says she has to go reapply her lip liner, and Rebecca gives her a little nod. That's when she goes to the bathroom. And then another one was at the end, the bar that Nathan is told to go and meet Rupert at. Bones and Honey is the bar that Coach Beard goes to during Beard After Hours for their wild night of escapades. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, just two fun little connections there. Love it.
Damn. Yeah, I did not notice that. I'm glad you pointed that out.
If only we had seen the woman from Beard's Wild Night to really cap it off. But instead, we get Nathan dating a supermodel, apparently. So we'll see what happens there. But another solid episode of Ted, which leads us into one of the best episodes of television of all time. Succession episode 3, Connor's Wedding. When you saw this title, when we knew what was coming, this was supposed to be a fun, lighthearted episode where we make fun of Connor for his absurd wedding to Willa, for all of the ridiculousness, his 1%, all of this. Little did we know, Johnny, what exactly we were walking into on a fateful Easter Sunday night. While Logan doles out an unsavory task ahead of his trip to meet Mattson, Connor fixates on minutia at his wedding. Man,
It's true.
That is very true. An unsavory task was doled out, and Connor was talking about loony cake, and then everything went crazy.
Oh, boy.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. Rest in peace, Logan Roy. What a twist, Johnny. What an absolutely shocking but inevitable twist that this show is called Succession. We knew from the start that, it doesn't necessarily have to be death. It could have been a retirement, but it was likely going to be death. Logan Roy had health complications. There had been multiple scares throughout the show. But who would have thought in episode 3 on a random episode that this was going to happen? And the way that it unfolds is so fantastically brilliant that, the combination of episode 3 and showing Logan at full steam to start this episode, he is, telling Roman that he has to fire Jerry. He's talking with Tom about axing Sid and all of the power moves. And as he's getting on this airplane, talking about getting a little bit more aggressive. And it's just like classic Logan Roy. You wouldn't bat an eye. You wouldn't think anything different. And then the next time we see him, he is getting chest compressions in the aisle of an airplane. And I don't know about you, but this felt so real in the way that they executed this. And I did not believe it at the time. I was very much like, oh, Tom is pranking. Like this has to be some move. And then like within a couple minutes, I was like, oh no. Like the double calls to Shiv that get ignored, then having to call Roman instead, and just it was so perfectly executed in every single element, and Tom not being able to say that he's dead, using euphemisms, talking around it, Kendall and Roman not being able to accept it and refusing to believe it, and just everything that unfolded. What was your reaction? What were your thoughts, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm still trying to process and like understand what the hell just happened almost 24 hours later. But I mean, this is definitely going to be, I mean, there's been so much said about it already online, and articles, interviews, analyses. It's, difficult to like summarize it, but it's just something that's going to go down in history. I mean, television history as such a major, shocking. It's not even, there's so many facets to this episode that make it brilliant that you really have to like slow down and really think and kind of piece it all together to really appreciate how great it is and what they pulled off. From a micro scale to a macro, just in the full scale of the series and just the scale of the season and the episode itself, scene to scene. I'm totally there with you. I think that the key thing that I highlighted with you last night when we were talking about it, and what I've still been thinking about and seeing a lot of other people discuss, is just the incredible shaping of perspective with Jesse Armstrong and the way that he wrote this, and Mark Mylod, who directed it. Putting us in the shoes of the kids on the ground on that boat and receiving this news that there's something wrong with Logan, he's sick, to escalating it all the way to where it ends up, which is Logan is dead. Mm-hmm. And man, it's I'm totally there with you. I'm not sure at what point I truly believed that it, and knew that it was seriously like gonna go this way, that he was gonna die and that he was dead.
It's a weird balance, because like once they go for it, like once you could tell how serious it was,
yeah,
like this is Succession. This isn't an MCU show, like, not to throw shade. It's not, but it's not a show where people die and come back. It's not something like, there are real stakes here.
Yeah.
And this is not something where they're going to fake you out and bring someone back. Like even Game of Thrones, like Jon Snow died and came back. Like that's not, there's no red witch here to bring Logan Roy back. Once I could tell how serious it was, I was like, okay, we're doing it, and we're doing it brilliantly. I think I had mentioned this to you guys, that the setting of how they like went about this was so perfect, because they're up in the plane and the kids are on the ground, like you said, on this boat, and it kind of evens the playing field because we know that the Roy family has infinite resources, infinite money, access to the best doctors in the world. They can do whatever they want. And not up in a plane, you've got a flight attendant and what's the term that Kendall uses, medical airplane people or something like that. Like you can't get Logan to medical attention. You don't have a doctor up there to work on him. So everything is all of their money, all of their status, their last name, like everything that they're so used to having an advantage with and just bending the world to their will because of is out the window. And they're three helpless children with unreliable communication trying to figure out whether their dad is dead or alive. And Logan is shit out of luck trying to get chest compressions from a flight attendant to bring him back to life. And I feel like for a show where like everyone is so despicable, like you don't like you like the characters to watch and to enjoy the show, but no one on this show is lovable, likable. You don't enjoy them as a human being. And that was such a brilliant way to bring someone that is unrelatable to a relatable level, because I had a tweet that popped off and it's gotten a bunch of replies from people who are like, I have lived this situation. I have lost my father. I lost someone and was only able to talk to them on the phone. Like the way that they executed this put these billionaires that are despicable villains as someone that you can empathize with and set aside who they are as a person and feel for them. Like I'm not a huge crier in movies or shows, and I was shedding tears. Like tears were streaming down my face. Rebecca was on the couch and I was in a chair and I didn't have eyes on her, and then I just heard like a gasp as she like inhaled, bawling, tears streaming down her face. I was sitting at attention with my like head in my hands for 50 minutes straight, and that's not something that you can just do. Like the fact that they are able to make these people cry like you shed tears over someone that is so despicable just shows how brilliantly executed this was.
Yeah, absolutely. And make no mistake, it's still rest in piss, Logan Roy. We're smoking on that. We're smoking on that Logan pack. I hated him. Terrible man, terrible father. But yes, that's what makes it so effective, though, even still, and what makes it so impressive is you still, empathize with the position that these people, even though they're terrible, stupid, greedy, whatever you want to call them, at the end of the day, they are still children to this man, and they are, his children, and they're losing him in this very bizarre, surreal, but relatable, position. And, I've watched this episode basically 3 times now. I watched it immediately afterwards by myself when I was getting ready for bed and going to bed last night. And then as soon as I got on my lunch break today, I also threw it on and skipped just to where they like this big sequence starts for like 30 minutes where they take the call and then they figure out what's going on. And then, it plays out. So it plays out. It seems like it's so easy and like seamless, but you just know how complicated it probably was to stage all of this and edit it, direct it. I think what really got me, like, there are little parts that get me, but today, especially watching it the 3rd time, like, it's called Connor's Wedding, right? And Connor is a character I've had such funny feelings about, or like thoughts on. Like, he is, and I think, the audience is made to kind of feel this way, at least the first couple seasons. Like, he is really, like, he's just in the background. He's doing his own thing. He has his own kind of weird relationships and quirks, and he is just another one of these kids, but there is something different about him because they don't share like the same mom, and he is older, compared to the other 3. And so, there is a bit of a distinction made between them. And so it's been recently, though, in the last couple episodes and last episode especially, where Alan Ruck, who has been such a great performer the entire show, has really been getting some great material, some great moments where he can actually dig into the fact. And he got some of this at the end of season 3 as well, when he was feeling kind of ostracized at the wedding of their mother. And he was doing this, he had this situation with Willa, he was trying to propose, and he just is so raw and so real in a way that's so different from the other 3. I can't really quite put my finger on it, like what it is, but he really got me this episode, like, because it's the wedding, he's been building up in his mind, and he loves Willa so much, and like he really does want to make her happy, and he wants to make his dad proud, and he wants to like have the love of his family, like especially on like this particular occasion. And just when they go to tell him, like Kendall and Siobhan, like when they go to try and tell him like what's going on, his immediate reaction is so brilliant. Like just the way he responds. Oh my God. He's like, well, the first thing he says, well, is he? Like, is he dead, basically? Because they're it's still kind of murky or not clear. And then they kind of imply like, yeah, like that's what it seems like. And he's like, oh man, he was like, he never liked me. And like, it's just like, oh my God, it's so brutal. And then there's this whole situation with like the cake, and the cake is like triggering him and reminding him of the time that his mom was like sent away to like a mental facility, and like just the trauma he went through with that, and I'm sure a bunch of trauma involving Logan. And then to pile on top of that, when this is supposed to be his wedding day, his dad dies. And so there's that initial reaction, and then he's like, I can't do this. And like he walks away and he walks out, and they're following him, and they go up to this private suite. And just like he really is starting to like process it, and like it's actually like sinking in. And I think Alan Ruck just, there's been so much praise, deservedly so, put on Kieran Culkin and Kendall Roy, aka Jeremy Strong, and Sarah Snook. But I think Alan Ruck in particular has just been brilliant. And today watching it, I genuinely, I was like getting clothes together and like getting my laundry together, and I was just like actually tearing up, like in like such an emotional, like in my closet, just putting laundry away, like listening to this guy talk about like the fact that his dad has just died.
Yeah, and I mean you mentioned it, the end of the last episode was when we got the message from him about like the good thing about having a family that doesn't love you is you learn to live without them. That was a gut punch in and of itself. And then to have his response here being that he didn't even like me and I never got the chance to make him proud of me, like those are devastating. But it stuck me immediately the way that they told him the news. And the first thing that Shiv says when she's explaining is dad's on an airplane to Sweden. And this is right after, we've heard him say multiple times, being Connor, like, oh yeah, dad's going to pop by. He's going to be down here. Like he fully expects the other 3 know that it's not happening, but he fully expects his dad to come to the wedding and make an appearance. And so the first thing that he hears before he processes that dad is dead is that dad's on an airplane to Sweden. So like in my mind, like I think that was a very specific, intentional way that they broke this news. Not that the characters were, but the way that it was written was to, he hears that, and no wonder the first thing he says is he didn't even like me, right? Because he's thinking like, oh my God, this dad wasn't even going to come to my wedding. He's on a plane to Sweden. Right. Like there was never any intention to come to the wedding. And so I feel like that was such a small detail, but when you think about it that way, it's like it adds up to that's the perfect reaction for this character. Yeah. That it just worked out so well.
And that moment that you're talking about, like, yes, that's very, very well said. I think what also just like when I was watching it today and getting emotional was just, it was all kind of hitting me at once that in that line, and then in also the other things that I mentioned, like he is just this little kid who's like so desperate to like please his dad and like feel loved by his family and like be supported and like be, you know, have a happy marriage and all these things. And he, like, it's his wedding. Like imagine like I think there's just certain days that you just, everything should be about you, and like you want to be happy, you want everyone to like you know, kind of be at your beck and call, you know, maybe like it's your graduation or it's your any birthday you might have or your wedding. Like those are just the times where you really want to feel supported and like everything's going right. And it just
Mhm.
seems like everything was going wrong for him.
And
And he,
also the fact that it's not only your wedding, but it is your maybe it's not gonna happen wedding. Like the
yeah.
way he thought his bride was running off on him the night before. And there's no, this isn't a relationship made out of pure love. Like,
No.
so it was already rocky before that. And to combine that with all of this, and you know, 1% in the less than 1% in the poll, like he needed a win, and he absolutely did not get it. But still, nevertheless, he persisted. And as he said, could something good come out of something bad?
That was such a beautiful line too.
And they pulled the trigger. They got married, not the wedding they intended, you know, big spectacle in front of the Statue of Liberty, but a small intimate ceremony with none of the kids. That they had to bolt to go and make their statement, but Willa's mom and a couple
Yeah.
attendants or whoever those people were, that they still got their wedding. I wonder if this is going to be enough to, between the wedding and the dead dad sympathy, if that might get him up to 1%, 2% maybe in the polls, enough
Uh,
to change the tides of the election. But the fallout of this is going to be epic as we, you know, unfold the rest of this season. We get the beginning of it, the beginning of the end, with the statement from the kids, Shiv taking charge there, as she should, absolutely, you know, the best that she can as she's coping with the death of her dad. Sarah Snook delivers a everybody is fantastic, but Sarah Snook was truly stellar in this. All of them coping in their different ways. You know, Kendall watching from afar, Roman going up to watch him get off the plane. The one that hit me, I've seen a lot of people talk about it online, now that someone's pointed it out, but the I can't remember his name, but the security guard, essentially the chauffeur security guard, we get a brief moment of him as
no,
he's
Colin,
like,
yeah.
it's coming across his face, and he is kind of like sinking in that, sure, I don't know how close it, like they went to dinner in the last episode, that they had moments together, they had moments that nobody knew about as they worked together, and he was with him all the time. And you know, nobody's going to care about him moving forward. The kids don't give a shit about him. The only person who potentially did was Logan, and now he's gone. So that it's a small thing, but it was just another one of those little tiny moments that added up to make this such the perfect depiction of this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Real quick, I'll just fly through some quick thoughts, like just overall with the episode. Um, I'm sure I'm gonna forget some things. I'm sure you'll have some things to add, but I think just the structure, the way they went about the in basically in real time. Like we've seen certain parts of the show kind of do play things out in real time, but a lot of it is kind of truncated or edited and kind of sped along. This one really plays out in a way where you get the same information that really the kids have. You feel what they're feeling. You're having the realizations that they're having. I think that was really what the whole crux of the episode relied on the most. And I think that's what makes it so brilliant. But also the fact that it is taking place in episode 3. There's still 7 episodes to go. You know, I think we all had a notion that Logan might die, but just they still, like, it almost seemed like an inevitability, and they still managed to shock us with it. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just so, it's hard to wrap my head around that. But I think that and then just the performances, as we've mentioned, were all amazing. There's really not like anyone that I thought didn't deliver or that wasn't just like so spot on.
Chuckles the clown. We haven't really talked about the plane crew, but Tom is spot on, you know, as he's throughout the moment trying to
Yeah.
share the news with the kids, and then afterwards with Carl and Frank and Carolina, like everybody that's on the plane. it's such the weird, like, gotta launch into business mode rather than taking time to grieve it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah,
But
Frank tries to like kind of he has a one-on-one with Kendall at one point where he really kind of confirms like that Logan is dead, like he's not going to be coming back, and
yeah,
he calls him son, and he just trying to kind of talks him down. I thought that was brilliant by I can't remember the name of Frank's actor. I should probably look that up, but I thought he did really well. Matthew McFadden, of course, always great. I think there was that one moment where he kind of goes into private and like kind of breaks for a minute when he's talking to Greg. I thought that was excellent. They all had just a moment where they really got to kind of show their stuff. Peter Friedman, that's right, or Friedman, who plays Frank. But yeah, it was really really, really good stuff. Yeah, Chuckles the Clown, Zoe Winters is Carrie. I thought that she was great. And just that, even that 1 30-second bit, I thought she just like played, because there is that level of shock. Like, depending on your relationship with someone, like there is, everyone responds differently, and it all depends on the relationship. But
yeah, they
I
all
like how they
witnessed
sprinkled
it
that in
too.
there.
Yeah, and like the fact that you were not hearing the news but witnessing it, like that's got to be just,
Yeah,
who
exactly.
knows, like you have the ability to react in any potential way possible.
Yeah.
I thought another cool thing, interesting thing was like the leaks, like the way, like, okay, we've got shutterbugs all over the runway as the paparazzi shows up, and the kind of speculation, like I imagine, with multiple people calling from the plane down to maybe Greg let it out or something. I don't know. We'll see. Because Tom has that talk with him a little bit. But they're like, is it our tail number? We're circling. Like, I never even thought about that. Like, sure, TMZ probably has tabs on, this celebrity's plane is flying here to there. Oh wait, they went off course, or this, something like that. But that, I feel like the meta aspect of that, and then also not leaking the news that in this episode that Logan Roy was going to die. HBO really had this under wraps, because I know some outlets did get this episode as a screener, and that was under,
Yeah.
solemn oath not to share any sort of spoiler. So that's props
Yeah.
to them. For I would have hated to have this spoiled for me. I know
Oh,
we were telling
no
Jake
doubt.
to log off immediately if he didn't watch it live.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. But I think, and last couple things I'll say specifically is, this is no surprise at this point, but Nicholas Britell, I mean, this guy is just another level, especially, in this type of show, on television, like just really, really incredible compositions that he manages to come up with, and always has the right, quality to it. I think that overall, like when people look back on this episode, we still have 7 episodes to go. Who knows where this is going to lead, what the finale is going to look like in comparison, or some of the penultimate episodes. Yeah, I think that this is just going to be an all-time great moment in television, as an episode that you can go back and watch and be like, wow, that was incredible. But also, in the moment, watching it live, realizing it live with other people, like there's very few things I can think of that compare to this. I mean, I would say the Red Wedding is certainly one of them. And it's such a level of shock, and just a overall incredible achievement across the board. Just everyone involved in pretty much every way you can think of, from conception to production to delivery, and executing it without, like you said, leaks, spoilers. It really, I was excited for it. It was hyped up, and it absolutely blew my mind. I mean, it's pretty historic television. So I just feel
It was
glad to be able to see it.
it was fun. Like, I was fighting the urge because I was so invested, but like I was watching this and I knew, I was like, this is like, Twitter's gonna be blowing up. Like, are people already tweeting about this? Like, but I was absolutely not gonna take a break to look at my phone or interrupt what was happening on screen. But I just like you said, you knew, like, as you were watching, that this was something special, that everyone in the world was gonna be talking about this afterwards.
Right.
So as quite the experience. And I know some people, just a final Easter egg, since I had those Ted Easter eggs, people have pointed out that I didn't see this initially, but apparently there was a lot of speculation because on the poster you can see the plane and like the reflection of the building that's behind them. And so at the time people were dissecting everything and wondering what it could mean. And now looking back, that obviously is why that was included there. So
Yeah, no doubt.
alrighty, going from the small screen to the big screen, switching it up here, talking Air. This is like I said off the top, directed by Ben Affleck. It's a sports biopic drama, sort of a blend of a lot of different things, telling the story of Michael Jordan. Not really the story of Michael Jordan. He's in it. It's about him, but it's more the story of the people who made him, off the court, that is. Obviously on the court, he didn't need any help there. But for the full written review, you can check that out on our website. Go and give that a read. But here we go. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Jason Bateman, Viola Davis, Chris Messina, Marlon Wayans, and Chris Tucker make up this cast. Currently sitting, this is a very, very, very highly praised movie. This had a sneak preview. I don't know if it was considered, the world premiere, but preview at the South by Southwest Film Festival. It's currently at a 92% critics score, 98% audience score. That's higher than John Wick that we reviewed last week, was very high. That was both in the 90s as well, but 98 audience score. I liked it quite a bit. Not quite that much though. 82 out of 100, 4 stars for me. This was a solid watch, a lot of fun, but not that perfect. Johnny, what was the score before we get into this from you?
I would say this is like a solid 70-ish, maybe 68, 70 out of 100.
Respect that. I like it. So let me lay it down for you. From award-winning director Ben Affleck, Air reveals the unbelievable, game-changing partnership between a then-rookie Michael Jordan and Nike's fledgling basketball division, which revolutionized the world of sports and contemporary culture with the Air Jordan brand. This moving story follows the career-defining gamble of an unconventional team with everything on the line, the uncompromising vision of a mother who knows the worth of her son's immense talent, and the basketball phenom who would become the greatest of all time. Johnny, we went to the University of North Carolina. We are legally obligated to say that Michael Jordan is the best basketball player on the face of the planet in the history of the world. I personally collect Jordans. I have a large collection. This movie, we are the biggest marks possible for this movie. And I acknowledge that. Like, I'm sure that plays into my enjoyment of this movie. But we are the target audience. This is not it's interesting because I feel like some people could go into this with the wrong connotation that this is going to be like a basketball movie about Michael Jordan, but it very much isn't. It's a sports business movie, which doesn't really sound thrilling. A lot of it is negotiations, boardroom meetings, marketing strategies, like things like that are not exactly the thrilling cinema we want to go to the theater and see, but at the same time it works for me. They really they executed it in a way that felt super compelling, had you on the edge of your seat, despite knowing that if you have any sort of basketball knowledge, fashion knowledge, like cultural knowledge, that Air Jordan is the biggest brand, that Nike, like, that the end of this story, and yet still it's a very compelling story to watch unfold. And I think that shows a lot of credit to Ben Affleck's direction, to the performances. Matt Damon is obviously the leading role here is Sonny Vaccaro, who's trying to recruit Michael Jordan to sign with Nike. Viola Davis is Dolores Jordan, Michael Jordan's mother. So I think it really has a lot of things going for it that work well. And I think you agree. It's just the extent of, how high do we praise this versus, I think we both agree that this is a good, interesting, compelling movie.
Yeah. it's yeah. My feelings are maybe a little bit more mixed than they should be, but my reasoning is this movie premiered at South by Southwest, and I feel like the reception was like, "Oh my god, like this is the crowd pleasing film of the year. This is the best movie of the year so far. This is going to be, competing for Oscars, et cetera, et cetera." And
Mhm.
there tends to be some film festival bubble buzz that happens, and people just get very hyped coming out of the theater. They just saw Ben Affleck in person. He's talking about the movie, world premiere, et cetera. But then also I've seen some reactions, similar to that. And I think, I can only speak for myself. You said it. I'm a Mark. I'm a Carolina graduate, Michael Jordan fan. I'm not even as big a fan as you probably, but I do like this story from a conceptual level. I think that it's a good telling of it for the most part. I think that it gets the nuts and bolts pretty squared away. It has Matt Damon's character, the guy that's trying to prove himself, that's trying to land Michael Jordan as an endorsement deal. You got
Mhm.
the guy that invents the shoe, basically designs the shoe, the Jordan 1. You have Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike, that's at the head of it all. Then you have Michael Jordan, who's just kind of a figure in the background, a shadow that you don't really get
Yeah, I
to
really liked
discuss.
the way that they used him.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that they've said about it being that, Michael Jordan is so iconic. You can't, the way I was talking about Lizzo being in Star Wars in The
Mhm.
Mandalorian, it's like you wouldn't see that as Michael Jordan. You would just be like, oh, that's a guy playing Michael Jordan. Like it would have taken away from the immersion of it all. And so the way that
Yeah.
they use him being, just he has maybe like one or two lines, but you only ever see him from the side or the back of his head. It's
Mhm.
very he's hardly ever in it. It's more just like a body double, a stand-in, which does
Yeah.
look very much like him. A young rookie Michael Jordan. It's very, very reminiscent. So
Yeah.
props to
Um,
them for that. I thought that was super cool.
yeah, that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting choice. And then you have his agent, you have his mother, of course, Viola Davis, and then a couple other figures in Nike, like Marlon Wayans' character, or not even Marlon Wayans, Chris Tucker. Marlon Wayans is kind of a one scene cameo who does a good job, and then Jason Bateman is the other kind of main guy. So
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. Like I said, I liked the movie. For me, it was just like it was a good solid, economical sports kind of business story. And it was told well, and the performances were all pretty well done. And it just didn't do anything exceptional in really any department. Like there wasn't a single performance where I was like, wow, like that was incredible, or like that was an amazing scene, or that was an amazing performance. There's not anything that stands out from a cinematography standpoint. The editing just kind of plods along. You think a movie like this, especially from someone like Ben Affleck who did Argo and The Town, like you would think the editing would be really like snappy. And this is a movie that folks have been comparing to like Moneyball and some other films that are kind of like sports adjacent almost. And like it never really has the kind of speed or the wit or like the really like snappy, like I don't know, like rapport between any like specific characters in like a specific scene. Like it just kind of moves along at this kind of like little nice pace. It just kind of goes from point A to point B to point C, just as you would expect it would. And it doesn't do anything flashy along the way, doesn't do any unexpected detours, anything that says anything more than this is the story of designing the shoe and pitching it to Michael Jordan and Michael Jordan accepting it. It has some really funny like postscript like title seek cards that have like what happened to Michael Jordan, what happened to Phil Knight, what happened to it's just an like a funny like fun little like kind of Sunday matinee with your best bud or your dad. Um,
Absolutely. You said it.
yeah,
Dad movie right here. This is the number one dad movie of all time. Matt Damon has a thing for these movies after appearing in Ford versus Ferrari. That was the last great dad movie, I think.
I
Uh,
gotta say though, if we're talking about dad movies, that's the thing. There's a lot of better dad movies out there. If we're talking about the dad movies
This is
subgenre,
gonna be your dad's favorite movie of this year, we'll say.
hey, I don't know. I don't know.
It definitely has big dad energy though. Because you've got the sports story, it's the compel like the likable scrappy characters, the 80s nostalgia, the soundtrack, like all that stuff. Like, and I say that in a good way. Like I was a sucker for it too. I enjoyed it. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I don't see this being any sort of Oscar contender. I think it's being, if people like it that much, then great for them. I'm glad they enjoyed it. I'm not overhyping it, I don't think. But I thought it was very, very good across the board. I was pleased by it. Matt Damon and Viola Davis both have really solid monologues. I thought those were both great. Matt Damon giving his when they're in the final pitch, trying to he kind of throws the playbook out the window and speaks from the heart to Jordan, trying to get him to consider Nike. And then later when they're calling to accept the terms, Viola Davis as the mother has a good speech and a lot of, I think she was part of, like, this movie was clicking with like the bro guys being dudes kind of thing. And then she kind of brings this gravitas to it when
Right.
when he goes down to North Carolina, shout out, and knocks on the door, and she kind of is this like very clear, stern matriarch who rules this household despite having the best basketball player in the world living under her roof. And she's so soft spoken, but so, like I said, just like, not to cross her. She runs shit. And I think that Viola Davis's performance kind of elevated this for me to take it from just, a fun basketball movie to something a bit more serious. But again, I still don't necessarily see this as being an Oscar contender, acting performances being nominated or anything like that. But that's not to say it wasn't good. It was 4 stars for me, a lot of fun.
Yeah, she's definitely the highlight. Like, I would say she is the strongest part of the movie, and she does add that little bit of gravitas you're looking for. Like, it does bring a different kind of texture as far as like her monologues and the mother son relationship, and even the relationship she has with his Michael Jordan's father in the movie. Just a different energy in like the scenes that she appears in. And I think that was definitely a nice way of breaking up the more hectic and over the top elements of some of the other scenes with guys like Chris Messina and Jason Bateman and whatnot. So I like that a lot. And she and like you said, it's never too like she never has like a big loud scene where she's like making an impassioned speech or anything like that. Like, she's always very low key. She just has a lot of power, and like the presence of her is like enough. And I thought that was nicely done. So definitely agree there. And the 80s stuff, like, I found that to be, kind of like run of the mill. Like, it was a lot. Like, the opening montage is literally just like so many different like random moments, like pop culture and like historical from like the 80s. Like, everything from like Rambo or Rocky to like the Berlin Wall to like sports stuff and like music, and they had so many random songs like dropped in there. I just wasn't expecting all that. I was like, okay, like that's like, I get it. Like, all right, I got you. I did get a kick out of all of the 80s shoes, like the sportswear and the Nike apparel. I thought that was pretty fun, especially Phil Knight's running outfit. I thought was pretty fun to see Ben Affleck, who's like a hulking figure in that get up. So, it's got its charms. It's a fun, just breezy, like I said, kind of look at this historical moment and kind of what came of it, how it happened. Similar to, I mentioned earlier in the show, I watched Tetris, and it's, you don't really think about later on, years and decades later, how these incidents, these little tiny interactions and meetings, precipitate these massive movements and culturally and artistically and whatnot. So I think it's fun as like a little kind of look back and like almost like a record of that. Sure, it kind of dives into it being a bit of a like Michael Jordan like promo and like a Nike
I
promo.
mean, yeah, a lot of the criticism I've seen has been like, this is just a 2 hour Nike commercial, but it's a
Yeah.
good 2 hour Nike commercial, which like valid.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It is a little too much at times, and that would be another one. I'm like, I would agree with those critiques, but I kind of expected that. I just go in and like, all right, well, we'll accept this. I will say, quick shout out. I think it was labeled as the Fayetteville Observer Times in the movie. There's a article clipping towards the end, I think. Fayetteville 910 represent. But yeah, I thought again, I wasn't mad at it. Didn't have a bad time. I would still recommend this to pretty much most folks, I think. I just honestly, I think they could have done like something even bigger, like more ambitious. It would be like maybe my other thing. Like I'll take this for what it is, but for such a massive like brand and like sports figure, like I think that they could have even had like a more big kind of epic telling of this, which yeah, I don't think necessarily it needs that, but maybe we'll get a Michael Jordan, biopic at some point. I don't know if there really is one, at least one that's been like successful, but
We just have The Last Dance. That'll get us through.
The Last Dance will pretty much get us through anything related to Michael Jordan. I will agree with you there. But yeah, I had a good time with it. I would say if you're interested, you'll probably like it. Go check it out. If you're not big into sports movies, not big into Michael Jordan, basketball, whatever, I think you could still get a kick out of this, but your mileage is probably going to vary more so and maybe lean more towards my reaction than Zach's.
Agreed. Yeah. I think it's plenty engaging enough to still enjoy, but obviously, like I said, the formula, the algorithm that cooked this up had me and Johnny in mind for it. So that also, we should preface the review. We did preface the review with that, but like I said, solid 4 out of 5 for me. Enjoyable. It's not going to change the world, but I still had a good time watching it. So I would recommend. But any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I would say so far it's a good movie year. I mean, this is an adult R-rated, we'll say mediate or a moderate budget compared to some of these other movies, but I hope it does well, and we're just kind of riding along in through April, and I'm happy so far with how things are going.
Absolutely. We are eating good on the big screen and in television because we've got another episode of Succession next week. We've got Barry starting next week for the final season. Sunday night's going to be an absolute gauntlet of emotions, but we'll have to talk all about it next week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in week and week out. We appreciate the support and truly would not be able to be here doing this without you. So thank you.
Yes, as always, good times here. A lot of great stuff out there right now. Go check it all out. Get caught up. Join the conversation. We'll be here when you are ready. And as always, thank you again for listening. Follow on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. You can find those pages at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to the newsletter, The Rewind. You can find that on our social pages and on our website. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, whatever you can find a podcast on. We are there, and we will see you next time.